welcome to episode 4 of 1 AM. I'm really excited to bring on a special guest in a different city this time, in Taipei. I'm with my good friend, Felicia, who I've known for a couple years now and admire a lot both professionally and also personally. And so, excited to talk to her and dig in about different questions around her business, her life in Taiwan, her identity growing up as a Taiwanese in the U.S. Yeah, Felicia, you want to say a couple intro words to the audience?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's like you're popping my cherry for the first podcast actually. Yeah, I guess we've known each other for a few years before COVID.
Right.
And actually that was around the time that I started my own business.
Yeah.
So I guess you saw all the struggle and everything. So
Right.
I'm not sure if that's admirable, but it was you've seen me grow this few years. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I feel very special. I mean, lucky to also have been part of that, and hopefully many more years to come to witness new journeys and new growth. Yeah, I guess we'll start off. When I first met you, I found it really interesting that what struck me was like you grew up in Kansas. You were the first person I met that grew up in Kansas, and particularly being as a Taiwanese. What was that experience like? Like, as a Taiwanese person in a Midwestern state, were there any sort of identity struggles? Yeah.
It was not easy, let me tell you. I think I was born in Taiwan, and I actually spent about 10 years in Taiwan first before I moved to Kansas. And at that point, I think it was a very conscious choice by my parents when we were born. They decided that at some point they would want to move me and my sister to Kansas just because of the education they had when they were in the States before. So they knew at some point that we would go, just didn't know when. For me at 10, I think it was an age that was not too young and not too old.
Right.
So it was a little bit awkward. So I think in terms of identity, when you talk about, I guess I'm kind of like a third culture kid, it was like all of that together with, being a teenager growing up and in a predominantly all-white society, that was quite interesting. I think in terms of identity, it was, for a while, I think I was really looking to basically have my own identity, not to be identified with my race, basically.
Right.
I think when you're young, you're always trying to fit into, with your peers and whatnot. So that kind of I wouldn't say it's negative, but I think it's something that was just subconsciously I was trying to be like, okay, I don't want to be defined by the fact that I'm Asian. So a lot of that playing to the part where I was really looking internally into being defined by my interests, by my passion, basically what I'm interested in. So from a very early age, I think also thanks to my parents, because they really wanted me and my sister to really find our own thing. So we did a lot of things, sports, music, whatnot, and through all of that I found what I really like, which is more to arts and design and music, this type of things, more creative skill sets. And I think that really helped a lot. And I think for me to be defined by that, it was better than being defined by, hey, you're the Asian kid or whatever. Because there were Asian kids growing up, and they were definitely more of the model Asian kids. They were like the doctors and like the growing up, like they're the straight A students, becoming doctors or lawyers or whatnot. So I didn't really fit into that, and it definitely was very rebellious when I was a teenager. And I think a lot of that also contributed to the fact that I was really, really trying to find my own identity through all of that, and trying to make sense of the world and how where I grew up and what I was going through can connect to what I'm about to do or in my future. So I think, I guess that's
really, really fascinating that you grew up in a Taiwanese household, but in a sort of Western education system.
Yeah.
And do you think, say if you were to not move to the US, you were here in Taiwan, how do you think that would be different for you to explore those interests? Do you think being in the US, moving there at 9, 10 was formative to, help you pursue your interest in design, or what would it have been otherwise, say, if you were here in a local school in Taiwan? Yeah.
Definitely not where I'm at now, I
Right.
would say, because I think with the education I had growing up, there was so much freedom with
Right.
the school system and everything at that time. That was a long time ago. And for example, I think in high school we had a very good drafting program,
Right.
and you would not find that in Taiwan. So
Right.
I did drafting for 4 years, and through that I found that I really like drawing with my hands, and I really like architecture and
Cool.
design and all of that. And you wouldn't find that in Taiwan. And I think parts of it maybe is just a personality thing, or maybe it was because the way I was brought up when I was young. I think there were a lot of rules because I came from a very academic family. My father
Right.
is a professor, and it's very, very important that we need to do well in school.
Right.
So I think when I was a teenager, I wanted to break out of that mold a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I was very, very against the fact that everything traditional, basically.
Right.
So if I were in Taiwan, I don't know what that would happen. That
Right.
would look like, because I think in terms of education, it is still a little bit more traditional.
Right.
Though when I was growing up in the States, I think one of the things is that they encourage you, thinking freely, and
Right.
basically encourage you to break the rules and whatnot. And even
Right.
all the way when I went to art school, that was basically the foundation of it, is to question the authority.
Right.
So I think that's
Interesting.
something that
Yeah.
I really appreciate,
Right.
to have the space to do that. And
Right.
in Taiwan would definitely not be the case.
Yeah. That's interesting. So you're like really appreciative growing up in that environment, but given that, why did you come back? Like, what was the draw? You went to a great art school, you had a great career in the US. What was the drawing factor coming back? Was there anything, as part of what you explained just now, was it bringing some of that, thinking or, that pedagogy back here to Taiwan? Yeah.
I think the reason to leave the US was, at that time, I just wanted to travel to somewhere different. And I
Right.
think being growing up in Kansas, the first thing I thought of was I really wanted to get out of Kansas
Right.
for college. So I went to Chicago.
Yeah.
And then from there, I thought I really want to see the world and I want to travel. So
Right.
I think somehow it got manifested, and I decided to jump on the first opportunity I had to do an internship in Singapore,
Right.
which is a country at that time I didn't know anything about.
Right.
I just knew that they also speak English, so I thought, okay, that's a nice, I guess like a jumping stone to go.
Yeah.
I think through that, with Singapore, it was a nice gateway back to Asia,
Mm.
and understanding,
Soft landing.
yeah, basically, and
Yeah.
how the culture works, and
Yeah.
kind of getting back into it, but not too crazy,
Right.
because it's still a quite international country,
Right.
Singapore. But also at the same time, because when I was in Singapore, I was traveling a lot to Southeast Asian countries, and kind of understanding the culture and the development and all of that comes with it. And
Right.
after that, deciding to come back to Taiwan,
Right.
parts of it is because of family,
Yeah.
but parts of it was also because I think I wanted to do something that was a bit more related to, like, geographically to, or like to culture and to where I
Right.
grew up. And I wanted to understand, I think at that time I was working at a design job
Yeah.
in Singapore, and I really wanted to learn about the doing part, like the manufacturing part
Right.
of design. And and then at that time I just so happened to have an opportunity to come back to Taiwan to work with that part a little bit and understand the culture of that. So that was something that was quite interesting for me. But coming back, I think, to Taiwan was definitely a much bigger culture shock than when I moved to Singapore. Yeah.
What were some of the adjustments like? Because culturally, you grew up in a Taiwanese household, you came back probably pretty often. Like, were there things where you were like, you found it really hard, maybe professionally or, you know, social wise to adjust to coming back? Yeah.
I think when I came back, first of all, my Chinese was not really up to par with business, like business Chinese. So I really had to work on that. Second of all, I think culturally, socially, everything is different. Even though my mom is Taiwanese American, but and then also, she brought me and my sister to the States. I think as Taiwanese parents go, they are still quite open. So they still have that. They're kind of bicultural too, in terms of how the way their parenting style goes. So coming back, I really didn't know what to expect, but it was really tough because parts of it was because I wasn't just in Taipei. I was also in the south of Taiwan, and that's very, very different from Taipei as a capital. But I think a lot of that was, going back, and at the same time I had more of a corporate job. So it was very it was a lot of rules that you had to follow, a lot of relationship, a lot of politics you had to play through, which is very different from the world that I was working with, because I think design, the nature of design industry is that you do the work and then the work speaks for itself. But if you're working in somewhere a little bit different, and with the culture, it's very, very different. It's about relationship and how to navigate through that. So that was all very, very different for me.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Like, principle of like this design, good design speaks for itself. But how do you navigate that in a place where it's probably more hierarchical and where politics is involved? Like, as a designer, as an artist yourself, like here in Taiwan, you find that sort of expression, whether it's like, doing a passion project or professionally, like how do you manage those expectations, you think?
I guess the thing about it is that I still believe that good work speaks for itself. And whatever project or whatever company or whatever brand you're trying to build, it does have its volume if you work hard and smart at it. But I think in Asia, it's more of how do you show that and how do you market that. But I'm thinking that's the same everywhere else. It's just that I guess in Taiwan there is that piece where it's like all about relation and how do you talk to people and all that. But I mean this is the same. I guess it's everywhere in like the more corporate, if you want to climb the corporate ladder and whatnot. In the States, it's basically the same, but it's just in Asia, there's a little bit more of that.
Interesting. Do you think that was a motivation for you to escape the corporate rat race here and start your own business or pursue your own project?
I think definitely. Also, it's like together with the background where, working as a designer, I think I'm very used to do things creatively and coming up with something from like ideas and whatnot. And even with the corporate job that I had in Taiwan, it was working under the structure of developing new venture, basically. So I think I'm just very interested in the idea of developing new venture, new ideas, and turning that into something tangible. So that's always been something I'm very interested in. It's just being translated from design to business to whatever to my job. So I think parts of that, yes, it's to escape that corporate ladder and just to have flexibility and kind of I guess I also learned that because when I was in Singapore, I was working for my ex-boss, and I think my ex-boss was someone who was really a go-getter, and he started his own company, his own brands, and he was really adamant about culture, linking culture, and having that as the backbone, and basically story tell all of that through his products and his business and stuff.
Right.
So I think that was something that was quite inspiring, and I think I wanted to do that when I was coming back to Taiwan. I wanted to do that for Taiwan, but it was just very, very hard because Taiwan is a very different market.
Yeah.
So in the end, I went back to Singapore as kind of the starting place for the company that I launched.
Yeah.
So yes, it is to escape that, but at the same time, it's just to, if there's something I'm passionate about, I think it's better that I'm the one who's in the driver's seat.
Yeah. Cool. That's, I think one really interesting thing I found about your brand is it really painted a picture of the difference between a design-led entrepreneur versus someone who's like ops-led or like operations or like from finance. Like one thing I really admired when I saw your product was how well it was designed. How do you think, being an entrepreneur but coming from a design background helped you? Like, what the design-led first entrepreneurship mean to you? Yeah.
I think as a designer, when I was starting, should I actually say what the business is?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we should definitely introduce the amazing product and the brand. Yeah.
So about 3 years ago, I started a company with a friend in Singapore, and the brand is called Ying Yi Wellness.
Yeah.
We abbreviate it to YY just because it's easier, and it's basically a wellness brand geared towards women and with the basis of working with TCM, so traditional Chinese medicine, with all the philosophy behind that, and we work with physicians with our own formulations and all of this, and coming up with the products ourselves, and we do that. We started that actually in Singapore, so not in Taiwan, and so that's what the business is about. What was the question?
Yeah, like what design-led entrepreneurship? Like from a designer building a business, you think it helped you in many ways, or?
I think it definitely did, because it was just easier to come up with product, to design everything and to build everything, because we didn't really have to rely on someone else. Maybe the manufacturing and the formulation, but those are something that's pretty straightforward if you find a reliable partner. But coming up with the nitty-gritty stuff like packaging design, or thinking about how product development goes, and also the customer experience. I think that part is very important to us. So the customer experience and how they perceive the product, because our product is actually the first product that we have is for an herbal tea that's specifically for women's period, and it's a subscription model. So we really spend a lot of time to think about what are the touch points and how people receive this and how it looks, where we position ourselves as a brand. So I think with that, it was just easier for us because I'm a designer, and then when we designed this brand and when we put this brand out there, we knew exactly what this brand is going to be like, and how it will be presented, and who are the target audience, and all of that. So from there, we can think about all the rest of the stuff. So of course, but with the financial part and the operation part, it's not as easy. So, but it's about knowing what your strength and weakness.
It's so super hands-on,
very hands-on.
Very attuned to the details of every touch point. I think I love asking any person who starts a business or entrepreneur, what was that original itch? Like, how did you come to formation with this idea? Was it out of some a crave for personal use, or you felt there was a market gap, or and how long did it take? You must have had the idea, and then what was the time frame from having the idea to actually starting putting something down on paper?
For us, I have to give credit to Maria, my partner, for the idea. So I think at that time, Maria came to me with kind of a very rough idea of this whole thing, and It was actually more of a product. It wasn't really a brand.
Right.
And then I think with that, put together with the design experience, I thought this would be a great idea for an actual company. And the more we research into Chinese medicine and the industry, and we kind of noticed that it's the industry that hasn't changed now for a long time. And so it was really interesting for us, and it was kind of, I guess, challenging, but it's like a good challenge for us to say, okay, we come into this space and we want to change a lot of things. Not everything can be done immediately. Definitely there's a roadmap for a lot of things, but it would be exciting to see if, you know, idea A comes to life and idea B comes to life slowly. And it's working with a very, very traditional industry. So people are not very receptive to this idea. But I think with that, it was also at the time, because YY is a very women-centric brand. Because of me and Maria, we're two women, and I think we understand a lot of the struggle that women have when they're working in health and whatnot. So I think it's also a topic that's also quite close to our heart. We did some interviews before and talking about women's health and using, you know, natural herbs and all of this. I think it's it's a topic that we both really align on.
Right, cool. Do you think there are any challenges being two women co-founders here in Taiwan? Like, do you remember any experiences where perhaps someone, you know, there was a bit of stigma, or like someone dismissed you because both like two female like entrepreneurs tackling a really traditional industry?
I wouldn't say it's very direct. If there are any negative thoughts or vibe, I wouldn't say it's very direct. But I do feel like it's more of two very young people that have no background in this, and coming in and thinking that you can change the things, or thinking that this business model will work. So I think it's more of a skepticism on not just us as women, but it's just the whole thing. But yeah, I think as women individually, I don't know about Maria, but I think for me, definitely experienced challenges in more traditional work, like more traditional industries.
Well, you think building a business in Taiwan is challenging? Can spill the beans here, or what are some of both the good parts and the bad parts, like in a nutshell?
I think Taiwan is interesting because Taiwan, with the resources that it has, it's really rich. So you can get a lot of resources. It's definitely like you can, if you want to start your own business, something small, you can definitely start small, and definitely have the financial resources, the operations and manufacturing and whatnot here. But at the same time, Taiwan is quite secluded with its own culture, the whole ecosystem of how people shop and everything, or how customers behave. It's very, very different from, let's say, Singapore or the US or Europe. So you really have to understand it. You have to get inside the minds of the local Taiwanese. And I think for us, it was a little bit hard just because we, you know, even though I'm Taiwanese American, I guess, but I really don't. It was really hard for me to connect with that and to understand how that worked. So that was also one of the reasons why we started in Singapore, because we understand that and we
market better.
We both work there and whatnot. So it's not easy, but I think as any starting any businesses, it's not easy at all.
But huge kudos, like, you know, building multi-country business, like, and especially like from a traditional space. Regardless of where this business, what's something you look back, 10, 15, 20 years and be like most proud of? Like, is it the challenge of starting something in this traditional space, or actualizing an idea to a product? What would that be?
just the fact that, you know, we had an idea and we turned that into something, you know, we turned that into a business. We are still growing and we're still quite small, but it was really quite tough. I mean, I think I forgot to answer you, but it took us 1 to 2 years time from, you know, from the drawing board to actual launch of things. And, you know, of course, and in between all that, there were a lot of also personal struggles and all of that. So I think it's just the fact that, oh, you know, we did it, and it was really nice to see that, you know, customers, we also have a lot of old customers that really support us even throughout COVID. And to just do something that we believe in. I think that's something that's very, very important. I think that's something that I would be very proud of.
Like really from idea to inception and to actually, you know, providing like a real tangible product that people buy. On the sort of, you know, struggles of entrepreneurship, one thing I, you know, think back to is we met at this Hive, the co-working space we're at right now. The one thing I find really beautiful is that there are all these people who run, you know, businesses, SME, like small medium businesses, or do projects of themselves. Do you think being in this environment was helpful and, like, you know, having other people who can openly share those struggles and sort of a supportive community?
Definitely, because I think, I don't remember where I read this, but I think founders understand other founders the best. I think only when you went through all of that and run into the problems that you run into, then you will understand. So I think it was really nice to have that support system here with everyone who has their own business and their different struggles, and it's just nice to have people who know what's going on.
I built some great friends. Like, I feel super lucky. I'm not a founder, but, you know, I work at a company. And very grateful for the friends here. So switching a topic, like, you build business in the wellness space. Like, is wellness something that's personally important to you? And what is your, you know, wellness regimen? How do you practice it on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis?
I think when we talk about wellness, there are two parts, right? There's the mental wellness and physical wellness. And I think when I was young, mental wellness was quite big for me in terms of, just because, you know, when I was growing up in Kansas, it was a little bit tough. So I think for me, it was very important to always be very aware of my mental state and think about how and why things are happening and how to basically digest them and digest all the emotions and all of that. So when you're an entrepreneur, that's even more important, I think, because mentally you need to understand when you're tired, when you're going to be burned out, and what's happening within all the chaos, with the deadlines and whatnot. So that's something that I've always very, very conscious about. And physically, I think it's also a very big thing. It's nowadays, I think after I'm 30, it's something that I'm always looking at. I'm always listening to podcasts about wellness. My friends and I, we have like these group about supplements and whatnot, and also working out and just being active. And I think it's all of this because it really helps you to relieve stress. But I think when you're young, at least for me, I've never had problems sleeping. It's always just kind of given that you're healthy and you can do whatever. But it's really, I think once you hit 30 and with work and stress, and it doesn't have to be business, like founder business, just any kind of work, that you just need to be super aware of all of this. And I think also another thing about wellness is that when it's not just about physical wellness, or like working out or eating healthy, or mental wellness. It's also there are little pockets of topics where you can look into. So for me, one thing that was very big when I started YY was that to look into productivity and how to increase that.
Okay.
So a lot of the factors play into this, and how not to be distracted, and
Right.
how to get a good night's sleep so that the next day you wake up feeling fresh.
Right.
All of this and the science behind that.
Right.
I think because of YY, and that got me really into all of this and reading on these things, these topics.
Cool. I need to get these productivity hacks and like some of the supplement list, the secret supplement list.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
we have a lot of
That's
these.
awesome. Yeah. That's IP right there. Yeah, I really like the division, or like the balance you said about both physical and mental, especially the part about like being aware of your mental state and trying to digest that.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Like, because sometimes I feel for me, like I'm aware of emotions, but sometimes I find it difficult to then link emotions to like, okay, I need to then do certain actions or some sort of process to digest. What's your practice there? Yeah.
I think for mine, it's a lot of inner dialogues with myself.
Cool.
Also, it's basically researching. I think everything, information is so accessible nowadays that you can go online and look for things if you're stuck on certain topics for whatever reason, for relationship, whether it's colleagues or
Right.
or romantic and whatnot. But I think all of these can be read, and there are
Right.
so many things online that you can get so many different opinions
Right.
and different thought leaders. There's so
Right.
many thought leaders nowadays on Instagrams and LinkedIn and whatnot. And I think it's to internally have that dialogue with yourself. And of course, a lot of my friends are also seeing therapists not just because they have anything, they're struggling with anything,
Right.
but sometimes it's just nice to talk it out, get a very, get a perspective from someone that's, is not partial to whatever is going on in your life, and just
Right.
to hear that very honest feedback.
Right.
I think all of that helps, having a good, network of people very close network of people that you can trust and talk to. I think that's super important.
Yeah.
People that doesn't, like they don't judge you or anything when you talk about certain issues and whatnot. But I think for me, it's really, a lot of that is really getting information, like, okay, why am I feeling this way? What is happening? And taking a few days to think about this and to just let it sink in. I think it's a lot of it's really just a lot of internal dialogues and not acting out just on my first instinct on okay, this is, just to rule out that instinct and just be like, okay, we need to think about it in another way and whatnot. And yeah, just a lot of reflection, I think.
Cool. Yeah, I love the internal. That's a special, it could be a skill or something that, born, you have an ability to process that. I guess different people just have different capacities to conduct those internal dialogues. Yeah. Do you think that? Do you think conducting internal dialogue is something that, you can train, or that's just kind of born and bred? Yeah.
Actually, we had this very interesting conversation with my cousin, because my cousin came and visited Taiwan, and we were talking about how being raised by Asian parents, we don't talk about emotions at home. And we were saying that the generation before us, actually, we can tell that they have a lot of issues showing their emotions in the right way.
In a healthy way.
In a healthy way, I think. So I think it's funny because we talked a lot about this just last week, and it's definitely something that doesn't come naturally.
Yeah.
And it really depends on how you were brought up.
Yeah.
And how you think, if that's natural or that's healthy, or if that works or not, and how to correct it from there. Basically.
Right.
So I think with me growing up, emotions are not very talked about.
Yeah.
I think any Asian, just typical Asian household is not about hugging. It's not about saying I love you to your kids. It was actually never spoken in our family in this sense.
Right.
So I think it's really about growing up, spending time with peers, and I think in the States this kind of mental topics is also very big, and it's very openly talked about and discussed. That it's very, I think it's healthy to understand all of that. I know now in Asia, in Taiwan, it's becoming more and more of a topic. But I think all of this, it's you have to be very, very aware, and you have to do a lot of research and do a lot of homework. So definitely does not come with naturally.
That's true. I guess you really have to put in the work, and sometimes you're also like putting in the work for your parents too. So you're doing double the amount of work. I think I feel that too. Also, like at least in our generation, it's like you not only have to process your emotion, you know have to process those who haven't processed their emotions. So you're taking double the burden. How do you feel? Now, especially that you're so aware of this, you do a lot of this work. How do you help someone who hasn't done that? Do you give them like the resources or like the cues, or like for me, I always think people are kind of, they have their core self that doesn't really change, and then the periphery sometimes changes. And then to guide someone to say, for example, to express an emotion better, it's a really hard task. Like I find that really challenging with people around me. But sometimes I would be like, how about, you almost have to predict what their next move is, or like predict what their next action is. How do you handle this, like with say, your family or like people around you?
I think it really comes with whether or not they want to change, or whether or not they want to be aware something is going on.
That's true.
That's the first step. I learned that people don't really reciprocate well if they are not asking for advice or opinions on anything. But I think for people who are, for me, it's just simply the entry point to all of these topics. It's so easy because it's just reading up some stuff, or it's just listening to some podcasts or some talk on YouTube.
So many resources out there.
And a lot of people have different perspectives, and there's definitely one that you can relate to. So I think with that, it's really about showing them. I wouldn't say show them the path, but it's just kind of show them that there is something out there that's like this. That there is this resource for you to reach out to, and just if you're having a hard time, this is there for you. But not to impose too much, because this is definitely a hard topic, and some people are okay with that. Like they're okay with not dealing with whatever emotional baggage or whatever thing they have, and it's definitely okay that works for them. So I think it's really about the boundaries and setting that up to help, I guess.
I think setting boundaries, both friends, families, and setting expectations become more and more important as you grow older. Speaking about one good way to maintain personal space is traveling. Like you travel quite a lot, like both within Taiwan, and you frequently go to Europe a lot. What does travel really mean for you? Like, is it sort of like a mental voyeurism, or like you do it for like to see other cultures? What's the value there?
I think for me it was more of a childhood dream to begin with, to look at all the. I think I remember looking at a lot of books from our library and looking at architecture. I think I guess that's kind of like the gateway to looking at different architecture in different countries. And from that, it started to go into, the longing for traveling and seeing things and seeing culture and meeting people from different places. But I think a lot of that, my passion kind of still stems from seeing art and creativity and projects that are interested, that stems from different space and different culture. Because I think that's something that I'm very passionate about. Just or any, not necessarily anything commercial, but very underground. So something that you need to actually travel there and understand. and talk to people to know what's there and not. So I think for me it's about creativity, to have that, to not become to become boundaryless basically,
right,
and
cool.
not have that limitation in your thinking,
right,
and to not just thinking on for business or whatnot, but just life and
right,
this. And I think that helps a lot for someone who's living in Taiwan, because Taiwan is an island, so sometimes you do feel like, especially with COVID,
small, yeah,
especially with COVID, and also with Singapore, you can feel
it's like insular,
the smallness of the country. And of course it's very nice, but you still need that stimulation,
right.
So that's why I travel, and just to also eat good food. That's
probably the real deal.
But yeah, I think it's I mean, if I don't travel, I would never be where I'm at right now and
cool.
have friends like
Yeah,
you.
yeah, that is true. Yeah, breaking borders. Yeah, I really like that central theme of like always keeping a fresh pair of eyes and like not having be static in one place.
Yeah.
For you, like, what do you see that sort of journey, like, what are you excited about in the next 10 years, like, personally, professionally, like, you talk about traveling, it's like always breaking these borders, like, what's the next border? Yeah.
For me, I think I'm excited about, I mean, right now I'm looking to see Taiwan is a nice base.
Yeah.
Looking for that second base. So
right.
I'm excited to see where that can take me. And
yeah.
I think also with that, it's also with a lot of technology that's happening right now with AI.
Yeah.
To see how that can change the world. And I think also a lot of, I think the next 10 years, just because it's a little bit crazy right now with the politics everywhere in the world, in Taiwan, the US, and Europe and everything, it would be nice to see what's going to happen and how that evolves.
Yeah.
And I think all of that will contribute to, everything that's going to happen, and how I will, basically set my goals for the next 10 years.
Right.
But I think for now, I really do want to explore more, and while I still have the energy and the time and the freedom to do this, I want to take advantage of that.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I like to reverse the question, like, I always ask my guests, it's like, what would you tell, your 25, 20-year-old self? Like, you look back, you're excited for a lot of things in life, but you also look back and you think about, okay, how could I have done things differently? What would you tell, your 20-year-old self? Yeah.
I think honestly, I would tell her to travel even more, or do even more things.
Cool.
I think because when I was 20, there was always, I think even now, at different points of my life, there's always doubts or fears to kind of put you in between your goals and whatnot. But a lot of time when you look back 5 years, it's like none of that matters.
Yeah, that's true.
I would tell myself to do actually the things that I want to do, and go apply for the jobs that you think that you can do, but just go and see.
More brave.
Yeah, and just talk to more people and do even more, I think.
Well, I really like the thread going on of just putting yourself out there, going to places, not being in, set yourself in one place and just always be constantly mobile. Yeah. I guess, any thoughts about if you were, say, 10 years from now, what would you tell yourself now? Like, if you put yourself in a position, 10 years later, would you tell yourself the same thing or anything different? Yeah.
That's a hard question. I guess I would still tell myself the same thing.
Yeah. Same model.
Same model.
Yeah.
Maybe just plan a little bit more. I think when you're younger, you can kind of afford to not plan or afford to jump into starting a company
Right.
With not much to lose. But I don't know, I think now maybe because I'm approaching 35, you do start to think about planning stuff or planning life.
Long term, yeah.
Long term in general. I think it's a good time to think about it now. I mean, the last generation starts to think about planning life when they were
Right.
like 20 or something.
Right.
But I think now it's a good time to just give that a bit of thought and see how the goals can fit into that and have a balance of that.
Right.
Yeah. It's more about not having limits, but at the same time you have a safety net.
Cool. I love that. Like it's like not like being open, but also making sure you like de-risk yourself and have that safety net. Cool. So we're at time. It's not 1 a.m., but it almost feels like 1 a.m. Maybe we'll continue this at 1
I
a.m.
think we should have like an unplugged version at 1
Yeah,
a.m.
exactly. Yeah.
Without the
The real drops.
without the
Yeah.
actual question.
That's true. Yeah. But yeah, really appreciate you being here, Felicia. Really, as always, really great conversation. And yeah, I think for me, what I learned a lot from this was just go get it. Like put yourself out there. Do the things you want to do and be really, be very free. Like be very like liberal with your time. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Thanks so much, Felicia. Yeah. I guess that will wrap up the episode. Maybe we'll have another one, but. Yeah, we'll have an unplugged version. Yeah, thanks so much.
When we talk about everything else.